Seemed like a lot of people were out there to greet him.
Here, I want to thank the Universalist, Coastal Unitarian, Coastal Fellowship. I want to thank you for hosting us to this event, and this is a town hall with Chris Schulte, and we have invited Greg Murphy to come. He was here in Beaufort for luncheon, and so we figured that it was a convenient time for him to just travel over the bridge to come and meet with us, but his scheduler said that he was busy. So Chris will be answering questions in his absence, and he will also answer his own questions. Okay, so what we're going to do, let me introduce Chris. Chris is going to be running against Greg Murphy for the North Carolina District 3. We're very grateful that you allow us to have your time tonight. I know that you're busy, he works full time, and we're hoping that we can learn more about him and his political views and how he will serve communities in North Carolina District 3. So Chris began his involvement in politics in 2016 after the birth of his first child. It was right around the time that Trump was elected for the first time, and it was just pretty life-changing for Chris. And I think that is when he started his interest in politics. So that spring, after the little baby was born, he got involved with the Onslow County Democratic Party. And he also served as the chair of the Onslow County Democratic Party and put his name on the ballot as a candidate for state legislature in a very gerrymandered district, ensuring that voters had a real choice, even in a so-called red seat. Chris is a full-time psychology instructor at Coastal Carolina Community College. He and his wife Shelley live with their 2 children, Evander and Amelia, in Richland, North Carolina. And I believe that's near Newburgh, is that? Or Jacksonville?
Jackson. Closer to Jackson.
Okay. All right. So, if you haven't done so before you leave, if you would sign in just so that we have an idea about who is here, that would be great. And we have questions. People have submitted various questions, and I have them on index cards, and I've given them to different people in the audience. So when the question time comes, I'll just kind of like point to one side of the room and hopefully it'll all work out. So anyway, let's welcome Chris. Give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm very happy that Liz pronounced my name correctly. It is Schulte. Many people, when they see that name for the first time, they say Schulte, or Schulte, or Shelty, like the dog. I have so many different kinds of mispronunciations of that name, but I'll not say it anymore so that way you don't get confused. And it's Schulte, pretty straightforward, like Schulte the money. That's what I'm going to use as a slogan for here. As was also said, thank you so much for the church allowing me to use the space to give people of Carteret County and surrounding areas here a voice in order to be heard on a day that my coward of an opponent comes in, gives a little speech, and runs out of here. That's what he typically does. He tends to come on in and do those little meet and greets with a bunch of GOP folks. And then he takes off. As Liz was also saying, the reason I got involved, because a lot of people were like, well, you're a psychology instructor, why would you run for office? And as she said, it was because my son Evander was born, and he was born the day after Donald Trump was elected the first time, on November 9th, 2016. My wife was actually in labor as those results were coming in. And as I started to hear those results coming in, I became, on one of the best days of my life, petrified, horrified at what world I had brought my son into. And I decided at that point, once the results finally were counted up and we accepted them, unlike our counterparts in 2020, is that I said I have to do something. Because that was the first thing that I said to my son. That my wife had complications. She was born 6 weeks early. She had preeclampsia. And so I was the first person down in the NICU that got to hold him and do the skin-to-skin stuff. And the first words literally came out of my mouth were, "You've got to fix this." But as soon as those words crossed my lips, I realized that is not a responsibility that I can put on the next generation. I'm not dead yet. I have the responsibility to fix this. That's what I have to do. And so, as was said, I immediately went and got involved with the Onslow County Democratic Party that spring in 2017. And I became a vice chair, and I think I held all the different vice chair positions until over the last 2 years, I was the chair of the Onslow County Democratic Party. And the reason I started running for office then was because my daughter was born in 2019. Amelia was born, and that was right smack dab in the middle of, well, a huge rollback of the rights for girls and women. And I said, just voting wasn't enough before. Just being active is not enough. I have to do something more. And so I decided I was going to run for the state legislature races. And it was very gerrymandered, that first race. It was all of Duplin County and a little bit of Onslow at the time. And then I got gerrymandered in the second time that I ran, after that COVID election. It was my first one in 2020. Then in 22 and 24, I ran in a completely different district, in which they decided to put me in an even harder district than I did before. And so my numbers actually got worse. And a lot of people, when I say that, they get this look on their face like, why are you running if you're only going to get beat badly? I'm not going to get beat badly in this race. Josh Stein got 46% of the vote here in this district. I know I'm not Josh Stein, but we also don't have Trump at the top of the ticket. We also have a huge groundswell. The amount of people that are getting involved and the people that are so passionate right now are amazing in numbers. And so we really have a great chance at winning this seat, and we will win this seat next year. But I am going to need all of you. In which that I'm going to continue to say that tonight after I answer some of your questions and things like that, is that my call to action, they always tell us politicians, you got to have a call to action. Well, my call to action is for all of you to figure out exactly what I figured out that night that my son was being born. That you have to fix this. Because I can't do this alone. I certainly don't want to do this alone. Because the way I look at leadership is not that I tell you what you all need to be doing. I'm a trained counselor. My belief is that we all know ourselves better than anybody else. And that we need a support that walks beside us in this tribulation of life. And so what I hope you're able to do is to walk beside me in this. In whatever ways that is helpful for you. If you've got the money, great. Donate, please. If you have the time, please spend it out there telling people about my campaign. But the other part of that is that I really need you to just be with me. Tell me always what it is that you need. Because for too long, we've had no voice in D.C. Even when we had Walter Jones, who by all estimation was a decent Republican. Because anything's better than what we have. But I need you with me in this process. And that's why I'm doing these town halls across the district, which is a very large district for those of you that don't know. I had my first town hall out in Clinton, out in Sampson County. That's as far west as we go. I've been up in Greenville and Pitt County. I've been out in Dare County, on the Outer Banks. Been in Jacksonville and Onslow County, which is home for me. And I'm going to continue to go places. I'm going to go to Pamlico. I'm going to go to all the different places. We have 11 counties in this very large district. And I'm going to try and be at every single one of those counties, at events, festivals, at county meetings, all these things that I'm going to try and do to hear what people want for their voice in D.C. Because this isn't my seat. This isn't Shirley Greg Murphy's seat. This is our seat. And so with that, I would love to start to take some questions. Do I support Planned Parenthood? Absolutely. I was endorsed by Planned Parenthood Southeast in my state elections. I absolutely believe that it is so important, not just because, as there are opponents on the other side will say it's only about abortion. That's not the only thing that Planned Parenthood does. Planned Parenthood is cancer screenings, it is health, which is abortion is health as well. But the idea is that, of course I support Planned Parenthood, and I wholeheartedly will try my best to make sure that we stop these attacks on these agencies that are just trying to do the greater good for everybody involved. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you again for being here. Okay, my concern is very much public schools and the vouchers. And is there any way we can go erase what damage has been done, or what can be done about that? It sounds like public money going to private schools, which I thought was not supposed to be right.
I certainly am against the voucherization and privatization of our schools. The problem is that that's very much a state legislature issue, and that the biggest thing I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about and really have not made enough noise about the killing of the Department of Education is that they think that the Department of Ed is making curriculum decisions. They are not. The Department of Ed is mostly in charge of student loans. They are mostly in charge of helping out with students with disabilities and learning disabilities in the classroom. They help to organize all of that. And so when it comes to the privatization, that I think that that's a much bigger issue, obviously, that we need to continue to focus on, is that we need to stop privatizing everything. But I think that it really goes to a bigger issue as to like what my opponent believes versus the way that I believe about the role of government in our lives, is that my opponent believes that the government is too big. He believes that the government is waste, fraud, and abuse, which means really because the government is us. He's saying that you're a waste, you're a fraud, and you're an abuse of the system. And that what we need to do is we need to push back on that narrative. We need to show people that government does work when you're not sabotaging it at every turn. And so I absolutely would do anything I could at the federal level to try and make sure that we are not privatizing our schools. But as it currently stands, that is with the states, and it has been the whole time. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. How will you fight and defend our democracy when it appears to be under attack by the current administration and it's not going to stop?
I'm desperately afraid for our democracy. I'm afraid of all of those things that got me into politics is exactly why I ran. Is because I saw that coming. Is that Donald Trump and those that support him, they don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about the way that this country has run for the whole time. He's a disruptor. But the thing is that what we're going to do about it is exactly what we're doing here tonight. Is that we are not going to sit back and let him take it. We are not going to let Project 2025 take everything from us. We are going to fight it tooth and nail. But one of the first things that has to be done is that when I'm elected next year, I'm going to go up to DC and we are going to push for, because I'm hoping that a whole bunch of Democrats get elected with me, so that way we have super majorities. We're just patriots that want to fix this. We'll take anybody, even Republicans, if they choose to grow a spine. But we have to go up to DC and we have to return Congress to a co-equal branch. The legislative branch needs to be co-equal. We need to make sure that we are pushing back. And what that's going to mean probably is that we have to create an amendment. that defines what the presidency actually is. Because our founders, when they wrote the Constitution, they had no idea that somebody like Donald Trump would ever get through the primary process. They had no idea that the electors would ever allow somebody like that to get into office. And so we have to define it now differently because of Trump. That's unfortunate, but we have to. And so certainly being able to put those guardrails in place, that executive orders can't just be used in fiat, ruling by fiat. There are no kings, as everybody's saying they come out on the 14th, that we're having the No Kings rally. That's fantastic. I'm going there. The other thing is we have to absolutely make sure that we get money out of politics. That if we do not do that, we are not going to be able to maintain any gains that we make. Because the billionaires and the other ultra-rich are just going to continue to push back. And so unless we put that in place as well. And the third thing that I would certainly do is to create, you don't have to recreate the wheel, is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to end gerrymandering. We need to make sure that we have universal voter registration. Is that if you are a citizen of this country, there is no reason that you should have to go through a process to go vote. That is absolutely ridiculous. And so it's time when you turn 18, you get to go vote. Congratulations. I mean, I don't understand why we have to make this so hard to vote. I mean, I know why the Republicans want to make it so hard to vote. But that is not the America that I see and want for my children. And so those are kind of the three main things that I would say have to happen immediately or as quickly as possible in the meantime. And I think that we have, unfortunately, even some of the Democrats up there currently in D.C. are not ready to make that fight. And so I hope that our voices will kind of spur them on to get that going sooner rather than later. Because, certainly next year, if we continue on this path, it'll be even harder by that point in time to say it.
Thank you.
What are your ideas for fostering job creation in this area?
For job creation, is that we need education. I mean, it goes certainly back to the question earlier about public education, is that we need to make sure that we have a pipeline of workers being trained. In which something that's been continually said over the last couple of weeks, especially with this fight between the Trump administration and also with Harvard, is that there's this big backlash. People keep saying things like, "Oh, we've got to fight back against the elites." Well, the thing is that we are a service-based economy, and that the services need training. And we also, even if it's technology or any other kind of even trade, they need training. And so to be pulling funding, federal funding for grants, for research, or for scholarships, to not be bringing in people from other countries that have ideas and have the ability to really fuel our research in those areas, that we're really doing a disservice. In which that, ECU just got R1 status for research, right? Just in time to probably have it be taken away because, well, we're pulling all the money back. And so if you don't have infrastructures in place, especially here in the East, in which that we need to continue to build on that infrastructure, in which that we need better highways to get here, high-speed rail to help us get back and forth from the triangle, I think would be really helpful. And so being able to bring that money back here to the East, here in North Carolina, I think would be a really important factor.
For example, even if Democrats do get a sweeping majority in these midterms, for example, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and multiple Democrats in the recent debt ceiling crisis, they voted with Republicans to raise the debt ceiling, and all throughout my life, when I've seen debt ceiling crises, Republicans have fought dirty and secured many ways to pass bills when they are in the minority. So why is it a lot of people in this community feel like Democrats are nicer and will have the mentality of good trouble, while Republicans will throw dirt in your eyes? And for my second question, in the city of Moorhead, roughly around $800,000 have been sent for weapons to fund the genocidal state of Israel. Will you consider and fight that? It takes AIPAC money, so I was wondering if you could be a breath of fresh air to fight against this lobby.
Yeah. As far as the do nothing Democrat idea, that I would certainly be one in which that I'm not going to worry about re-election. That I think it's time for us to, as a party, get to a point where we realize that it's not about poll numbers. That it's not about how this might sound or might not be to people, right? That it's about being able to do the work, and so. Whether or not that is to raise the debt ceiling or not, I'm not going to get into that specific issue on that. But the idea is that, yeah, we need to push our party forward. We need to actually do something.
Would you be open to shutting down the government to push bills to protect Americans from the rising threat of fascist bills being put into law?
That it would be dependent specific upon it, in which that we have a lot of federal workers here in our backyard, that my neighbors work at Camp Lejeune. And so when we shut that place down, there are consequences to that, certainly. Now, I'm not against using any specific tactics to be able to make sure that we can save this. But I don't believe that by shutting down the government that is the only way to get that done, okay? To your other question is that I absolutely believe that we need to rein in Israel and their genocidal behavior. Is that we need to make sure that we are acting as an ally, because they are our ally, but we cannot allow them to continue to do those kinds of behaviors.
So would you work with different members of Congress to fully end all aid to the state of Israel and use that money to help people in this county?
I don't think that all aid to cutting back all aid to any country is a good idea, especially when they're our allies.
What we're going to do now is we're going to answer questions that people have, and if there's time at the end,
Sure.
we can entertain multiple questions, if that's okay.
Yep.
Adding on to your question earlier, I wanted to ask, how can public education be strengthened and supported as a college student relying on financial aid?
How can we strengthen financial aid, you mean? Well, I think that one of the first things that we have to make sure that we're doing is that we're not cutting back from that. And that by messing around with the Department of Ed and moving things around, and then threatening our universities and colleges anytime they speak out in a way that the emperor doesn't like, that we have to make sure that that is stopped. I mean, again, that would be part of making sure that the executive branch is reined in, that they're not allowed to make those kinds of threats. I mean, I would think that's against the law, but the fact that our courts have been so wounded, and with the big beautiful bill or whatever the heck they're calling it now, that within there, they're weakening our federal courts and their ability to fight back with these judgments that are keeping that judicial branch co-equal. But as far as being able to make school more affordable, I certainly believe that we need to make sure that we are at minimum making community colleges free, making that a whole system federally. If not, then moving to state schools as well at the university level. That I don't know the specific numbers of what that would look like overall, but I think that has to be an aspirational goal. Because once we save the democracy, as was asked earlier, and we get through these crises of the world that we're currently dealing with, we have to then figure out, well, what do we want this country to look like going forward? And that one of those things that I certainly would want as an educator at the college level is to make that more accessible to every single person. Because I truly do believe that that is the main way in which that we're going to be able to help people to rise up out of their station in life, whatever it may be, and allow people that freedom to, if they work hard enough, they are going to be able to achieve the American dream. But currently, with the costs in college, with the financial aid issues, especially around student loans, it is unattainable for many people. And so we need to make sure that that's there. As well as then, we need to roll back all these attacks on DEI, in which that my opponent loves to talk about how, oh my gosh, we need to make sure that we end DEI in our medical schools. What he really means is that we just need to stop people of color from becoming doctors, is what he's really saying. And I've had enough of these, not even really dog whistles, because I mean he's just blatantly blowing a whistle saying, hey, look at me, I'm racist. Because he also says that about Medicaid. And I don't mean to get away from your question, but he also says about Medicaid, he says, I've seen a whole bunch of people come through my office that I know don't deserve to be on Medicaid. Well, how does he know that? How does he know that? Well, it's one of two things, I think, for him. Is that one, it's either the racist part and the classist kind of idea, in which he thinks that he can look at somebody and realize whether or not they should be on Medicaid. Or he is willfully breaking the law, in which he knows these people should not be on Medicaid, yet he is still charging Medicaid. Both could also be true at the same time. So I don't know. I'll let you make that decision. But I certainly believe that as far as higher education is concerned, is that we need to follow the rest of the world, especially Europe and Canada, to make sure that we make it much more accessible than it currently is.
All right, just a bit of a preamble. Some of you are way younger than me. There used to be a fairness doctrine in the United States, right? And Reagan eliminated it. And so my question is, what are your thoughts about introducing legislation along the lines of the fairness doctrine that would require broadcasters to present balanced, unbiased facts about controversial issues?
Yeah, with the fairness doctrine, that this basically, I was born during Reagan's first years in office, and so I've been living my whole life under Reaganomics and Reagan's policies that have led us to this point. And that I think you can solely point to him and really say he was the reason for Trump. And that when we look through that lens of how Nixon certainly didn't help, but that when we look at the fairness doctrine, that we need something like that, and that the other part is that when we look at the media in general, that we do need a fairness doctrine, and that somehow we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure that social media is reined in. Because if you're going to act as media, then you are going to have to actually follow the rules like the media. In which, yes, I understand without the fairness doctrine, there really are not a lot of rules that they're having to follow anymore that are actually holding them to the standards of integrity that they should be held to. But yeah, I mean, something like the fairness doctrine needs to be reinstituted. I absolutely agree.
So what is your stand on the EPA and the environmental protection of our natural habitat?
Well, obviously I support it because certainly here in the East, with all these forever chemicals that are just flowing through our rivers and our wetlands being destroyed, that with climate change, the water is rising, and that I know that everybody's like, well, the water didn't rise as much as people said it was going to. That doesn't matter. The fact is we've killed so many plants that are in those barrier islands and things like that. The islands themselves are going away. I know in Onslow County, we've got North Topsail, the beach is basically eroding away. And so, the EPA is going to be absolutely necessary to be able to help us maintain that. Because if the beach is gone, where's a lot of our economy here in the East? If we have a hurricane come through and those barrier islands don't have enough vegetation on them, it's going to cause horrible flooding like we've already had from hurricanes coming through. Because it seems that these storms are getting stronger, and not just wind, which that would certainly help with, but also from that storm surge. That storm surge when it comes through, and then the amount of rain that's being dropped in these storms is absolutely devastating. And also I think that another thing that's going to have to happen is that much like any time Democrats get back in power, we have to fix everything that they've broken, right? We have to spend at least 2, 3, 4 years to be able to fix whatever happened before. And so then it seems like to people that Democrats aren't doing anything. And that's frustrating because that we are doing things. We are trying to fix it. It's just that we cannot fix it fast enough for some people. The other part of that is, though, is that with the EPA, they are gutting it and making sure that all those reports have been redacted. Anything in there about environmental justice, anything that mentions gender or sex or anything else that's tied into the environment, they had to get rid of. And so the idea that we are unable to do the research that's necessary, I mean, we also got NOAA here in the East, in which that they're not able to do their work in the same ways. Our park rangers, our forest rangers, they're being laid off as well. And so it's just a continued attack and erosion of the government, and it's by design. Is that if we can make government seem like it does not work, then you're perfectly fine with it being dismantled. And I hear that from a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are like, well, yeah, the government is too big. Okay, well, yeah, we can certainly cut back in some places. But when it comes to the EPA, I mean, we've fired so many people. We have stopped almost all research on things that will save a lot of lives. And then you tie that into also then what they're doing with FEMA is that the Trump administration basically said, hey, Western North Carolina, screw you. We're not going to send it to you. I wonder why, because we've got Josh Stein as our governor. I guarantee you if that was Mark Robinson, we would have gotten our money by now.
Our active military have endured water contamination and now mold-infested base housing at Camp Lejeune. What steps would you take to help them?
Well, absolutely, we need to do more than Greg Murphy has been doing. Is that he loves to talk a big game. He'll go out to Lejeune every once in a while, and he'll talk about how, he cares so much about our military members. But they haven't really done much yet. Certainly that we need to make sure that we are helping those individuals with their health care. That is certainly going to be tied into VA health care, in which that we have made huge cuts to. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we are hiring back the people that we have fired, and a lot of those folks are veterans themselves as well. And I'm not trying to steer away from what we can specifically do, but it is to make sure that we have veterans have work if they want it, if they need it, and also to make sure that they're getting the care that we promised them when they signed up. And that certainly part of that, and I think it goes to the EPA question, is that how is it that we are having our water so contaminated here in the East? It's because we have completely neglected it, in which the EPA doesn't just work on climate change. It's about our water. It's about our air. And that being able to just let polluters do whatever the heck they want, including our military, without telling anybody this is what's going into our water and our soil here on our base, that was completely negligent. And so we need to make reparation for the damages that we've caused, and help those people and the generations that have been impacted by that, because it's not just one generation of service members; it's their families and their children as well that we're dealing with that, and some of their grandchildren now.
Hi. Just really, I'm going to ask you a question, but I want to tell you this as a tip. So, about the Fairness Act, Section 230C2 of the U.S. Commerce Code and Small Business, Commerce and Small Business, is a section that pertains to social media. Specifically, it was back in the MySpace era, and it limits. Whoops. It limits the liability of social media companies from having to, I guess, police, for lack of a better term, those who publish information.
Mm-hmm.
If we could eliminate that code, that would solve our problem. Europe does not have this problem because they don't have that kind of code. So
Right.
the question I have is, where would you start to overcome the harm that's been inflicted by this, or is going to be inflicted by this big beautiful bill, specifically on East North Carolina?
There's a lot of damage that's coming. That one of the first areas is that we have to make sure that we're getting people covered for their health care. I think that's going to be point number one in the big beautiful bill, as they seemingly call it. That there are different estimates from the CBO, but we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars being lost from Medicaid alone. Also, SNAP is going to lose a lot of money. And so when we're talking about people's health and their ability to have food, I think that's a very important first step, is to make sure that we protect that as best we can. Now, whether or not that's going to get through as it currently is, I don't know. I think that we have put significant pressure on Senate Republicans like Tillis, in which thank you to all of you that have been calling his office nonstop, because I think that is working, in which that we're not going to have them voting for as extreme kind of things. But there is going to be damage, and so the first thing you've got to do is to make sure that we reinstate those people on Medicaid. The biggest problem, I think, for North Carolina is that we have that 90% trigger here, in which that when federal funding goes under 90% for Medicaid in this state, they can kick all 600,000 of those people off of Medicaid immediately, when we expanded last year, right? That cannot happen. That we cannot allow that to happen. But obviously, that's a state legislature issue, and so we need to make sure that we get state legislature folks to go up to Raleigh and start fighting against that there. But it's going to take a full front approach to it. But I think that saving medical care for the poor, for our children, it's mostly children that are receiving those benefits, and this idea that they're not working, these work requirement things, that's going back to the Reagan era with welfare queen kind of stuff, in which that these people are working. If they're able to work, they are working. It's just that we put these ridiculous standards in there, in which that if you're working, you make a little bit too much, we're going to pull all your money. And so what kind of choice is that? Is that, am I going to just stay in the terrible job that I'm in and go that route? And so what that really means then is that, like I said, is that once we save it, once we do kind of the triage of making sure that we save Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, all that good stuff, is that we need to plan for the future. We're going to need a single payer system of some sort to make sure everybody is covered. If that means that we kind of bridge that gap from Medicaid up to Medicare and kind of keep bringing down Medicare for all, whatever that looks like, however we got to do it, we have to do that. And also, we need to make sure that we are going through a process in which that we cover all health. One area that I think has been sorely neglected, and as a former counselor, I think mental health has been neglected way too much, in which that we don't cover it in the same ways that we cover physical health, which they're the same thing. Mental health is health. But the idea is that we need to make sure that we're working toward getting everybody covered with those mental health services as well, in which that we are in a crisis currently, and have been for even before COVID. A lot of people blame COVID for it, but it was already happening before then. Our suicide rates and self-harm rates for children, especially those in the LGBTQ plus population, is astronomical from where it was previously. And so we need to make sure that we are making sure that access is there, in which that can certainly come from the state governments, but also from the federal government. We can start to make sure that we have counselors in all of our schools, that we make sure that we are not privatizing in the same ways, and that we are going to fight back against that in any ways that we can at the federal level. But again, it is kind of a triage thing at first, and then we'll move to making those longer term changes.
What specific policies will you address to help working class families manage the cost of goods and services?
Well, first and foremost is that we've part of that process is going to have to, we got to cut back on these tariff powers that Trump's abusing. That the other part about the cost is that we are also making sure that we are pinching those that are getting those services like Medicaid, in which that all those dollars that we put in to unemployment when people lose their jobs, all that money we put into Medicaid and SNAP, it all comes back in our economy at significantly times greater. And that's something we have to really get back to, I think, more than anything, is really just caring about each other again. And that's that with that comes a broader economic change, is that when people actually feel safe, when they feel like they can live their lives the way that they want to, then we start to see the economy boom. It's that people act like somehow that the only reason that we had a balanced budget during the Clinton years was because we just cut all these services. That really wasn't it. It was that we actually were pretty safe, that we had a lot of our needs met. The problem was that we didn't sustain it because during those Clinton years, back to the Democrats doing not so Democrat things, is that we did make huge cuts to the social safety net. We allowed the Republicans to keep that narrative going that people don't need these things. And so for everyday Americans, the cost is going to come down if we just stop with these stupid trade wars. That's point number one. But also, we will have a bigger, stronger economy when we actually allow people to do their jobs, to actually work for a living at a pay rate that is sustainable. And so the minimum wage has to be raised. We haven't raised it since before I was in college. I think we actually raised it when I was in college, in which $7.25 ain't going to cut it. And I know that it's not $7.25 in a lot of places, but in a lot of rural places it is. And so this idea that we're somehow just going to let people make the decision that they're going to raise wages for people, that's not going to happen. These folks are not going to do it. They're going to continue to try and take as much money from the poor and the working class and siphon it back up in a trickle-up process.
Tax the billionaires?
Absolutely, tax the billionaires. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, like the concerns about Social Security is that we don't tax every dollar that people make for Social Security, because rich people have gotten this through in which they, I'm never going to have to use it. I'm not going to have to rely on Social Security myself. So why should I have to pay any taxes on it? Well, this is the thing, is that, and we see this, and I'm going to put my psychologist hat on for a little bit here, is that we see these eras of narcissism that come through from time to time. And we are certainly in one. That Trump is not the cause of that, he's a symptom of that. And that this idea that narcissism and self-focus is patriotism is disgusting. And we need to change that narrative. That people are not better off because they only care about themselves. That it is patriotic to take care of your neighbor. Love thy neighbor. It's not that hard. And so every single dollar that that billionaire makes should be taxed in Social Security. If we do that alone, Social Security will be solvent for decades.
What would you say would be an acceptable tax?
I would have to talk to economists as to what would be the best route to go. I don't have any specific numbers for you. But the idea is that, yes, certainly more than what they're being taxed now. Because, yeah, our tax rates on income are certainly, kind of in line with a lot of other countries. But that there are so many loopholes in that tax that we don't end up seeing them pay that full share. I do, you do, but they don't because they have all the tax loopholes in that. And so whether or not we've had different income tax rates of different levels up to 90 some odd %. Rich people are still going to be rich. So I'm not really worried about them. I'm not concerned about what's going to be so difficult for them because they'll be fine. If you've got $1 billion, I think you'll be okay. But the other part of that is that we need to make sure that we're going through a process of looking at how do we raise those taxes in areas that are actually going to be beneficial, because they can hide it if it's only income taxes. And so we've got to find ways to do that, and that's where it's going to come from the experts, because a lot of times people that run for office, they try and act like they're economists. They try and tell you that I have this very specific number as far as a tax rate that's going to fix everything. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm a psychologist. I don't know what the proper tax rate should be for people. But what I know is that we need to find a way to tax the rich more because they have been shirking their responsibility for way too long. My whole life, the whole trickle-down era has been a shirking of responsibility. That is not patriotic. That is narcissistic.
On that, I'd just like to say, if the rich say they don't want to pay Social Security because they don't use Social Security, and I say, well, I don't want to pay taxes for defense because I'm not in the military. It's ridiculous. But
Yeah, it's not a la carte. Yeah.
My question is, do you support USAID, and if so, why?
Yeah, I do. That just like I said before, is that it's our responsibility for rich folks to be patriots. We also need to be good stewards of this planet. And so USAID, we need to be able to make sure that we are, as the superpower, that we need to help others. Again, it just boils down to that we used to be a leader in the world in that area. We used to be the one that you could count on, that our allies could count on. We aren't that anymore. The rest of the world is looking at us and saying, where has America gone? And that we need to show back up again, especially in areas that are going to need that aid first and foremost. And so I think that we need to make sure that we're, again, bringing those essential services back. So I definitely support bringing them back to the level they were at before, and then possibly increasing in certain areas.
Thanks for being here. My question is, what are your ideas for decreasing income inequality?
Well, I think that we need to make sure that we are penalizing these corporations that are just moving out of the country, for one. That when they are leaving, we should not be giving them benefits for that. Trump does that, even though he says he's tariffing and things like that. But we're causing people to leave more and more. And so the income inequality, I think the education is part of it. We need to, again, focus on education. We need to become leaders in the world again in education, which we have not done for a very long time because we're too worried about putting the 10 Commandments in our classroom and teaching people that there was some validity to the Stop the Steal movement in 2020. And January 6th was just a field trip. Those kinds of things. But I digress, is that education is going to be important. We need the training for the next generation of jobs. We also, though, need to make sure that we're understanding that the world of work is changing, and that if we continue to stay behind the curve here, we're going to be left behind. And so I'm certainly open to some discussion about whether it be a universal basic income, making sure that we have, again, education being able to be in place for all people, not just those that can afford it. And I'm not just talking trade schools, as the Republicans certainly are. They all seem to think that college should just be a trade school. Well, I have no problem with trades. Trades are great. But we don't need all plumbers and HVAC workers. That we're going to need more than that. And that in a service economy, which we mostly are, we are getting to a point where a lot of that is already being taken over by AI. And so we need to be very much aware and progressive in that discussion as to what is the world of work tomorrow going to look like. And we need to be proactive in thinking about that, just like we should have been proactive in climate change and a lot of other things that we've seen coming for decades, and we just have not done enough. Because I guarantee you that other countries like China are thinking about this stuff. And if we are truly going to continue to be the superpower in the world, we need to be aware of that. But certainly raising taxes on people that can afford it is going to have to be important, because if you don't meet the basic needs of your people, income doesn't matter at that point. Because if you're sick, the income is going to be lost. If you are unhappy because you're depressed and you don't have the wherewithal mentally to be able to overcome that, you're not going to be able to make the income as well. But there are all those things that need to be done. Over here.
There was a time when CEOs only made 20 times more than the lowest wage earner.
Yeah.
How would you be able to tax them if they gathered up all that wealth, didn't distribute it back to their employees, if their income was more than 20 times their lowest employee? Can you tax all of it? If they don't do what they should have been doing for the last 50 years?
Well, there definitely needs to be some penalty for that. I mean, they always act like, and my opponent Murphy continually says this, in which that we're taxed too much as it is, and that it kills business and it kills ingenuity, and it creates a system where you're not going to do anything. Now, as a state employee in North Carolina, I can tell you that I still go to work and do my job as best as I can do it, even though I'm not paid as much. Okay, so that's BS. As you lived there, thank you for that. But the idea is that yes, we need to make sure that we are penalizing these CEOs that are only caring about their returns in the stock market. That how we do that specifically, I'm open to ideas, because that when you start getting into corporate taxes, that starts to become murky, because there are so many of those loopholes. In which because they'll call it it's unearned income, or like Trump was doing, he'll hide it in loss in a building that he overvalues or undervalues, whatever works for him in taxes, that kind of thing. It's going to take a complete system overhaul. I would certainly be for a more simplified tax system. It should not be this complicated. Whether or not we can make that happen anytime soon, that's another issue, but I will definitely push for a more simplified tax system. I mean, it should not be this difficult or that easy for people to just hide their money in different places.
No, it's not fair that some guy who's only making $20,000 a year pays $5,000 in taxes, and a guy who's making $1 billion isn't paying. That's not right.
Yeah, I'm all for maintaining a marginal tax system. I certainly am against a flat tax. I think it's regressive. But there does need to be a simplification of the tax code. That it shouldn't be that most of us, our taxes are very simple, but it's made much more difficult by the tax laws that are in place. And that if we don't do it right, then we get fined and we get more money and things like that. And we have to go on payment plans and things like that. And it just continues to hold us back. Rich people don't have to worry about any of that. And so if we can simplify it for the most of us, I think that that would be the easiest way to go. Now, again, whether those rates are at a certain level for certain income levels, I'd leave that to the experts at the CBO and economists to be able to tell us what do we think would be the best for the most of us, not just for a small group of very powerful people.
Where do you stand on the anti-immigration legislation in the land of immigrants?
Well, I think that we are a land of immigrants, as much as I bag on Reagan, I mean, the guy even did say that we are the shining city on the hill. He actually was for, as well as George H.W. Bush, were for being able to help people to become citizens much more easily. Is that it's perfectly fine to have a border and a secured border, but we need to make sure that we are making it possible for immigrants to get in this country. It is next to impossible right now for people to do it legally. We've done it before for Europeans. We've had Ellis Island before, and so it's time for us to be able to figure out an actual immigration policy that is going to be fair for everybody. We can have a secure border, but that doesn't mean that we just keep it closed. You have to have, like I think it was Reagan that even said it, you can have a border and a wall even, but you have to have a door. And you have to have a process by which the people can become citizens of this country, because that's what built this country. And so I think that's getting lost in this whole horror show of what we're doing to these immigrants. But again, it's like that once we kind of do the triage work, the crisis work of like being able to save these people from not being like sent indefinitely to prisons in some foreign country they've never been to. They've been trying to send people over into Africa. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. I mean, that to commit the crime of coming across our border, to then be rounded up and sent indefinitely to prison without due process is horrible. That is so anti-American that the only reason that people are coming here is because they want a better life for themselves and their children, just like all of us. All of us are lucky enough to have been here and born here. But if you weren't, and you have a choice as to, if I had that choice, if it was whether my son had to join a gang or we all die, you're damn right I would walk thousands of miles to get my child to somewhere where that doesn't have to happen. Now, yeah, do we have to fix the system? It's absolutely broken, absolutely. And Democrats shoulder a lot of that blame too, because they haven't done it either. We've had plenty of times where Democrats could have done something. We did absolutely have a bill in which the Republicans wanted nothing to do with it, in which that Greg Murphy certainly voted against, and all Republicans certainly have continued to vote against, because they don't want anybody that isn't like them here. They want rich people, rich white people, to come here. They want these Afrikaners to come over, that supposedly are being killed in record numbers or something, which is all just, right white nationalist kind of stuff just over there in South Africa. That it's all conspiracy theory stuff that isn't true. Kind of goes back to the fairness doctrine and being able to make sure that we actually know what's real and what isn't. As a scientist, I certainly believe that there are facts that we can verify. And you cannot verify that Afrikaners are being killed and their land being stolen from them. It's very similar to eminent domain. But back to the question is that we need immigration reform finally. That it is something that we can both protect our country and our sovereignty, help people to do it the right way, as everybody tries to say. I believe in that as well. But if the right way is next to impossible to achieve, then what's the point of even talking about it? And so we need to make it an actual system that works for people, so that way they can come here and live the American dream the way that we've sold it to people my whole life and all of our lives.
And Chris, I have a question. I was just sitting here thinking, I
Where are you? Oh.
Sorry.
Liz, sorry.
Sorry, I could have just not used this, but anyway. I'm sure you're aware that we're having a really difficult time getting young people involved in our politics and interested in politics. Do you have any ideas on what we can do to improve that?
Yeah.
Any magic wand you have?
I wish I did. But what I can tell you is that I work with a lot of young people at my job every day. And that I think one of the biggest problems is that people don't really know what those issues are. In which that, I'm not saying that some young folks don't know. I mean, there are a lot of folks that do know. But they're hearing what's going on social media. They're not exactly aware of maybe the background of the issues that are there because they haven't been educated in it. I'm not saying that this is some sort of willful ignorance. And that so many people that I talk to are like, well, I don't do politics. I don't talk about politics. It's not important to me. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to break through that is to help people to understand that when we talk about these policies, what does it actually look like in reality for everybody in their everyday lives? You know, that was the same question I got at the District 3 convention because everybody has that same question. How the heck do we get people out to vote, especially young people? But it's not just young people that aren't voting. It's that I'm 43 and elections pass, I will go on certain websites and I'll see, well, how many 42-year-olds last year had voted up to that point in early voting. And tiny amounts. And so I'm an old millennial, right? And so us millennials are moving into our middle age that we're not voting. You know, under the age of 50, people aren't voting. And a lot of people are going unaffiliated now. And so the unaffiliateds don't vote either in numbers very high at all. And so we honestly don't know who these folks are. And so the way that you reach folks is you meet them where they are, you talk to them about what their concerns are, and you help them understand, because I think that's something that I can do fairly well as a teacher, is to be able to break down the complex and not to use the jargon of, you know, like when I said single payer healthcare, a lot of people don't know what that is. And a lot of younger folks, especially thanks to the Affordable Care Act, they can be on their parents' insurance till they're 26. If you're 22 years old, you don't even know what insurance is and what it's about. I didn't know anything about it, right? When I was 22, I had no idea what the heck that was. I didn't know anything about buying a house or any issues that were beyond that. But what I did know was certainly when I needed medical care when I was off of my parents' insurance. But again, if you don't know what single payer is, then that's not going to make any sense. You're not going to get behind that policy. If people have those issues, you have to be able to listen to what they're saying and then try and figure out a way to help them with that. And so I don't think it's just young people in general. I don't think that it's any one category of people that we have to reach. We have to reach as many people as we possibly can. That we had millions upon millions of people not vote, go in a downward direction this last time and the time before. And that's something that we're going to have to reckon with, and we're going to have to listen to folks. I get it. But I don't think it's just focusing on the young, because we lost a whole heck of a lot of people age 65 and older too.
Traditionally, black people tend to vote Democratic. And as I look around this room, I don't see any black people in here. And I think that there's something that we can do there, because together we could be better and be stronger.
Unfortunately, that is something that I've seen all across this district, whether it's in Greenville or out in Dare. It's a lot of white folks and a lot of older white folks, and that's that when you don't feel like that you're being heard, when you don't feel like that you're able to make your life any better by voting or getting involved in the political process, then yeah, you're not going to take advantage of that right that you have to do that. But I think one of the first things and we're starting to see it. I have seen a lot more people coming out to events and things that are not your traditional folks, but that it's not going to be events like this that are going to get a lot of folks to come out from different groups.
Hi.
What's up, Alex?
So Indivisible sometimes is able to pull a different kind of population to become a little bit more engaged.
Sure.
Can people hear me without that?
There are people that are 65.
It's not working.
We're taking a collection for a new microphone.
Yes.
So, Indivisible, because it
New microphones.
partisan,
Mm-hmm.
and because we do things differently, we can pull in people from different areas of life and different populations. However, we have noticed that the Democratic parties tend to want to take over our space and our events, and they don't want Indivisible on the scene. Not in Carteret County. Not in Carteret County.
No, that's right.
However, I have a hard time as an unaffiliated voter trying to pull in other unaffiliated voters, younger generations, people of color, when the Democratic Party continues to come in and take our space and say, no, we don't want to give up our power. We don't want to let you have a voice here. We're going to keep taking over you. And it's very, very difficult to continue to hold that space. So what would you think the Democratic parties across District 3 need to hear to make Indivisible have a voice, to give us that space, to help you?
And I can piggyback on that. Alex and I have been working together with some of these protests. It's like an Eastern coalition. It's like an Eastern coalition between Craven County and Pamlico County and Carteret County. And I think we're stronger in numbers. She is unaffiliated. She represents Indivisible. I represent myself. I also represent Indivisible Carteret County. We just started a chapter. But I'm also a Democrat, and I'm an elected official. I'm the third vice chair. So I wear lots of hats, but I think if we only focus on having these events as Democrats, we're going to miss a whole lot of That's the beauty of the Democratic Party bringing in these progressive groups, because that's where we've got to do that. We can't keep doing like what we've done.
Honestly, I'm perfectly fine with everybody, like you said, in numbers. The problem is that we as candidates certainly, I'm getting screwed by both sides in this discussion, because the county parties and the state party will not support me until the primary is over, and so they won't let me speak at my own event, because we had the town hall in New Bern. That was my town hall. But then the state party and the national party decided to swoop in and take it from me. Because since they were there, I couldn't speak. Some of you were probably wondering, like, why the hell is he sitting in the front row and not saying anything? That's why. I wasn't allowed to. Okay? And I'm not saying certainly, Alex, that your group in Indivisible does this necessarily, but there are some groups in Indivisible that will not allow me to speak at their events either. Because you're nonpartisan. And so where can I speak, right? Really the main way that I've been able to get through is through some of the county parties within the Democratic Party. And so that's all I can speak to on that issue. But I am not afraid of speaking anywhere, anytime to anybody about anything. I am perfectly fine with hearing any voices and having that discussion. that in these events, it's not always necessarily a discussion. It's a question and answer kind of thing. So I'd much rather be able to have some of those one-on-one times with folks as well. And so that'd be great as well. But the thing is that for me, just trying this grassroots effort, as I am a full-time worker, I'm a parent of young children, and I'm trying to run for Congress, I get no support from anybody at this point. Until I'm the official candidate after the primary, then I might get like a, hey, let's have an event for this guy. That's it. And when people say things like, oh, well, you're running for Congress, so you've got a bunch of money coming in. No, I don't. You want to know how much money I made yesterday? I saw an Act Blue, $10. I need to raise over $3 million to beat Greg Murphy. $10 a day is not going to cut it. Okay? And I want to make that clear. I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that I have this so rough because I'm running for Congress. I made the decision. But the thing is I think so many people don't really understand how difficult a job this is. So many people were like, when I was chair of the Onslow County Democratic Party last year, people were saying, why didn't you run anybody against Greg Murphy? This is why nobody runs against Greg Murphy. This right here is the infighting. It is the not getting any money from people. And I get it. Times are tough. We're in economic uncertainty. The East is not exactly a place where a whole bunch of people have a ton of money that just is liquid for them right now. But it still is there. I mean, people probably in this room have given significant amounts of money to Josh Stein and Roy Cooper. They haven't given it to me, and that's okay. I'll earn it. But the thing is that I think that, and I know it's a long-winded answer and it didn't directly get to your question, Alex, but that I think that we need to stop. I mean, that I think one of the biggest problems is that it is that grouping that is the problem. That's, I think, a human problem. That's my main theme in my introductory psych course, is that, especially in the social psych chapter, groups are the problem. Is that once we start looking at ourselves as fundamentally different, that's where all of our problems start. And so we need to stop talking about it not as indivisible or 50-51 or the Democratic Party or these groups. We have way more in common than we have differences. And yes, we may disagree on Israel-Palestine, or we may disagree on certain things, but this kind of virtue signaling, litmus testing kind of stuff has to stop. We cannot keep fighting each other because, oh, well, your group didn't let my group come here and you didn't believe this way on this one issue, or you said this one word the wrong way and that kind of stuff. That is destroying us. We are destroying ourselves from the inside. We are all on the same team. We need to act like it. And I hope that people can start to connect to that. Absolutely. I've seen a few hands. You want to come up closer or yell really loud?
First of all, thank you for coming here. Second, I think people get turned off by voting because the Republicans have a big, large, lying propaganda machine to megaphone that discourages people from voting by spreading lies that elections are rigged, and Republicans have been doing that for a few years now, mainly Trump. And the young people get a lot of crap from the Republican Party. They're not getting the truth. I'm really mad about this. Because I believe the young people are thinking that it's both sides. Yeah. Republicans have been spreading that lie for many years, not just from Trump, even before Trump. They're getting a lot of misinformation out there on social media. And I think a lot of the young people don't by Democrats for this country, for the American people, for disabled, for the military, for the young people, students, okay? They don't know how much great historical legislation that do nothing Democrats have done for this country. And it angers me that the lying Republican machine is winning, and we need to conquer that. And it doesn't take much for young kids to Google all the great historical legislations that Democrats, and sometimes Democrats alone, have done for this country and the American people. And I think that we need to voice that for our young people. And and also about immigrants. I think we also need to tell the American people that immigrants do jobs that American people don't want to do. And they also pay taxes that they don't get anything in return. Tax payments, that they don't receive anything for it. Billions of dollars. And we need to put that out there too. Thank you.
Yeah. I agree that our messaging needs to be much more personalized. We need to make sure that we are getting to a point where we are helping folks to see that if you were able to get a Pell Grant, where did that come from? What is the Pell Grant? Because a lot of students, when they come into college, they just get it and they don't know what it is. They don't understand what it, and again, I don't even think that we need to talk about it as party. We just can talk about it as, those that are in the progressive party at the time, because the Republicans were that for a little while. And so when they flipped in the 60s, that was something that they went completely different directions. But again, it's not about left versus right. It's about up versus down in a lot of ways. And I think that we need to make sure that we're messaging that appropriately, because everybody can connect to, if I get sick, am I going to go bankrupt? If my kid gets cancer, am I going to be able to take time off of work and be able to take care of my child? These are things that I think anybody can connect to. But when you're calling it, when your kid is hungry and you call it SNAP or the CHIP program or whatever you want to call it, people, they don't know what that is. And so I really think that it is a messaging problem in which that we have let the Republicans get away with far too much. But at the same time, people have been calling them out. This is not something that has just gone completely unanswered. I think that's unfair to act like Democrats have never said anything or done anything in response. It's just that we are being drowned out because of the fairness doctrine being taken away. And that there are far more right-wing podcasts and channels and all these different areas of media in which that one of the main social media are owned by one of these fools, right? And so this is, I understand. We want it now. But this has been decades in the making. It's not going to be fixed in a couple of years. Even when I win next year, it's not going to be fixed in 2026 or 2027 when I take office. But we will make the change. And yes, I completely agree with those that had said things about Democratic leadership. They have not done enough. But we also can't just continue to sit back and say they're doing nothing at all. Because as much as I would love to say, yes, burn it down and start over again, if we had so many questions about how do we save the democracy. Well, what does that look like to you? That's the thing, is that if you want it to be what it has traditionally been as far as the structure and the norms of the government, you can't burn it down. You have to work within it. And I am on that side of it, in which I believe that as long as we have the system in place, I'm going to fight to the death to make sure that we save it. But that does not then mean that once we save it, we then sit back and do nothing. I completely agree with you on that. But again, that's not just on people like me that want to go to Congress. That's not just the people that want to be the President of the United States. That's all of us. Is that I want to make sure that you go back to what I said in my opening remarks. Is that the only way that any of this works is if you each make a decision to fix this. I can't make it happen alone. Even if we got supermajorities, we can't make it happen alone. That we have to push our politicians. We have to push our neighbors. We have to push our family members. We have to educate our friends and family members and our neighbors. That's all going to be important. But again, I can't do that alone. I've taught thousands of students in the 20 years I've been teaching. Did I reach some of them? Absolutely. But that's just a drop in the bucket. I'm no hero because I do that. That's just what we each have to do. We each have to do our part, whatever that looks like. And some of you can't go to events because you are working, or because you've got a sick grandparent that is living with you now, or a sick parent that you're taking care of. Or like my nephew, who is on Medicaid. It's just called something different where he lives. He's got a rare genetic disorder in which he needs care 24/7. And so my brother-in-law gets to stay home with him and take care of Henry every day. Medicaid helps to pay some of the costs of that care from home. And they also, my brother and sister-in-law, they get some respite care because of that. He also gets to go to horse-assisted therapy and musical therapy and all these different therapies and things like that. All that's gone if Medicaid gets cut. And then what? Then you're going to have to hire somebody to stay at home with my nephew, Henry, to take care of him 24/7. Or you then are now just a one-income family in a world where that isn't doable anymore. That's how I think we reach folks. Is that we have to help people to realize is that when you talk about Medicaid cuts, a lot of people are like, that won't impact me. It may not impact you directly, but I guarantee somebody in your family it will. Your neighbor it will. One of your kids' friends will. Okay? Lauren, yeah, had something? Yeah.
Something that's been increasingly alarming, actually, ever since 2016 when Trump started his run, was the creeping authoritarianism, the vilification of minority groups, the attacks on free speech, free press, now the illegal deportations, even now a military parade, and specifically about Greg Murphy that fries me, is his clear disdain for half of its constituents. Even recently, someone was asking him on camera, how do you feel about the budget cuts? And he says to them, who dressed you this morning?
Yep.
What?
He
Yeah, he says, who got you dressed this morning?
Yep.
There's a video that's going to go viral. Or today.
That's what he said.
Yeah. So, I guess that's just my more of a comment more than anything is my concern that, this country is going in a direction that I fear that it's not going to be able to come back from.
Well, I agree that that's the direction that we're going in, but we're going to stop it together. That we are going to make sure that by voting, by protesting, by calling these folks, Greg Murphy has changed. He has done a teletown hall that actually was a week before actually advertised. Whereas usually he does one, but it's at like 9:30 on a Monday, and he tells people at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. He does. But baby steps. I mean, this is a guy that has done nothing in his 3 terms up there in D.C. He doesn't talk to anybody. And that's the thing, is that I will guarantee you today that if you help me get elected, I will hold these kinds of events regularly. I want to talk to folks. I want to be transparent. And again, I'm not worried about getting reelected. If you do the work, you will get reelected. And so my other ask certainly is that please, if you want to see me succeed, if you want me to go to DC and make these changes that we're talking about, I do need that help. I need fundraisers. I have my QR codes out there on the table that go straight to my ActBlue. You can write checks. I just need a little bit of information from you if you do that. But any little bit helps. And especially from a large group like this, it's even littler that I need from each of you to be able to pay the bills. And I just want to say one really quick thing. I know Lynn's about ready to, Liz is trying to kick me out here. I get it. We're at time. I think we're getting close to 7. So I will let you folks go. But there is a system called NGP Van that we use to be able to keep all of our data, especially on voters. And we use something called Vote Builder to be able to find, like when we all go out knocking doors or making phone calls and that kind of stuff for candidates like myself, we have to go into Vote Builder to get that information. Well, NGP Van is the thing you have to buy to have that. It is not free. The National Party sure as heck doesn't give it to us for free. And at the federal level, especially in a race like mine, they don't even know that District 3 exists. Okay? They don't care about us. No one's coming to save us here. But that NGP Van costs over $1,100 a month. $1,100 a month. Okay? That's just one of my costs every single month. And so again, I am not downplaying the $10 that some of you could give, or $5, or $1, or $3 a month. I sincerely thank you for that. But if that's all I can get from a handful of people, this isn't going to happen. My campaign is going to die before it gets moving. And so I sincerely need that help. Okay? And the financials are very important. But then if you can't, again, I'm going to need your help on the phones, knocking doors. I'm going to need all that support. But the best thing you can also do, other than give me some money, is that you need to tell people about this campaign. That when you hear people complaining about the fact that their spouse got fired from the EPA, or fired from NOAA, or their spouse couldn't get their VA care because it was a 6-month wait. Tell them why that's happening. And tell them there's a different way. And that different way is by electing people like me. I'm not the usual candidate, I know. But maybe that's what we need. It's something a little different. And so I sincerely thank you all for coming out tonight. I would love to continue the discussion with all of you. If I didn't answer your questions, certainly come talk to me afterward, as well as then I have my cards out there. Email me with questions. Give me calls. I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. But just understand that when people like Greg Murphy have a staff, I don't. I'm at work all day, like you. Okay? And so I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can. But thank you all so much for coming tonight. I'm Chris Schulte, running for District 3, Congress.
Thank
Absolutely.
This is a beautiful space, and the things that you do in this community are just amazing, and I'm very grateful. And definitely, Chris, we're on your side,
Thank you, Liz.
and we are fired up here for.
That's right. Here, here.
Thank you.
Hey, okay. Okay.